Brought to you by Sip for Your Cause.
Hello, and welcome again to Let's Talk Nonprofits, show where we discuss nonprofit sector, all aspects, those best practices that help nonprofits improve in the areas of increasing awareness, funding, sustainability, and ultimately impact. And we are proud to bring you another exciting guest that will be here in the form of an expert that helps nonprofits improve and be able to operate at a level that brings about revenue generation to, again, increase the impact. So today we would like to thank our sponsors, Sip for Your Cause, for allowing this type of content to be possible. We encourage you to visit them at www.sipforyourcause.org and find out how they can help your nonprofit organization, again, increases awareness, sustainability, funding, as well as ultimately, yes, the impact. So again, we ask that you please go back and look at all of our shows, and you can find this show again at www.bizlinks.tv. You can also find it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/bizlinks.tv. Take out the dot that I just put in there. And also our YouTube channel, youtube.com/let's BizLinks TV. So again, we thank you, and again, remember to leave your comments so that we can forward those on to our great guests so that they can be back in touch with you. But again, we thank you for joining us in for another episode of Let's Talk Nonprofits. So today, we have a great guest who's an expert in the field of helping nonprofits achieve their goals. We have Chataun, Denis, and I would tell you she has been in the industry since she was a senior in high school. So I promise you that, not that she's that old now, you probably say just a couple of years now. You say, oh, she's only been in 3-4 years, but I promise you, you're going to hear some great information that you can take and apply. And we ask that as you find out the benefits of listening to her today just from this program, that remember to reach out to her, and we will share with you how and access her services so that she can be of service to you and your organization. So welcome, Chataun.
Thank you, Nash.
Well, we're really glad to have you here. We actually met a while back, and when I just found out all the great things that you did, I really was desirous of having you on the show so that you can share with our audience. So thank you again for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite.
Yes. So, like we always do on Let's Talk Nonprofits, before we allow them to hear about the great things about what you do, just tell them a little bit about who Chataun is.
Oh, okay. Well, again, my name is Chataun Denis, and I was born and raised in Ohio. I started working in nonprofits, like you said, in high school. It was a summer jobs program. And I started working for the city of Dayton in the planning department. Okay. I love all things urban nonprofit development. And I interned there through undergrad. And my supervisor, who ended up branching off from the planning department, started a cultural affairs division. And from there, we did leadership institutes, we did art exhibits. That's where I started to package the grants and really learn how to write the grants, and just was introduced to all things community-based. And so I've been there ever since.
Well, I tell you, like I say, that she's been in it since her youth. And, that's very rare to find someone to be in it as long as you have or as early as you have. And that's a very strong point that I would like to bring out. But the name of the company is Grant Source. And, but, I'm going to say, and this is no knock on it at all, so don't take it that way. Those of you who follow us regularly, I'm saying it's misleading because she does so much more than just the Grant Source piece. That is a key component of her business model, but as we go on and we converse, you'll find out that she does a whole lot more to help the organization. So let's start off there. Okay. So tell us about Grant Source. What is it?
Grant Source is a consulting company, and I started off 8 years ago just writing grants and named the business Grant Source because that was my passion, writing, telling stories on behalf of nonprofits and helping them to get the money that they need to do the work that you all want to do. And then quickly learned that my passion then was the startups.
Okay.
And I quickly learned that the startups don't have any money.
Right.
And so I had to adjust the business model.
Okay.
And in order for the startups to get to the point where they can actually pay me to write the grant so that I can get them the money, they had a lot of work to do. So I then branched off to start the coaching program. So there's not only is there grant writing, but there's business coaching. I help startups to develop a business model, because most people who, when they first come to me, they say, oh, I either have a nonprofit idea or I have a nonprofit already. It's 2 years old. I haven't done anything with it. I'm just trying to figure out how to get money for it. Can you get me a grant?
You know, let's go there. In fact, I think it's very interesting, again, those of you who are Let's Talk nonprofit loyalists, you hear me say all the time about making sure that you understand that your nonprofit organization is truly a business. And Absolutely. If you hear what Chataun just said, you know, she gets into the business model of it. So let me ask you, I don't even want to ask you because I think we know what the answer is, but what percentage of the nonprofits who come to you don't get the fact that they're a business?
I'll give you a stat. The IRS master file stat, the last time I looked, 60% of nonprofits generated zero. Well, back then it was, I did a sort on $2,999 or less.
Wow.
That's what they were reporting to the IRS.
Wow.
You can't do anything on $3,000. Wow. So that number was 60%. So I would say maybe about 75% of the people who call me, they're in that startup phase and they're looking for money.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, one of the things that we talk about, which is one of the reasons our sponsors, and we align with them, one of our show sponsors, Sip for Your Cause, and they provide models for people to create recurring income.
Okay.
And so what we try to help them, or the organization trying to help them do, is to create revenue streams to support that piece. So speak to that, how you help companies address that. Yeah.
Well, I usually start with, and I have a free 20-minute phone consultation that I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay. So I invite people, and I usually just, you know, we start off with a relaxing conversation like what we're doing now. Okay. And I'll ask them, okay, well, what are you trying to do? Yeah. And it's usually a combination of their passion, or in their minds, or they have a vision for themselves that they want to become a philanthropist, essentially. Okay. And they just automatically assume that the nonprofit business status is the only way that they can do that. Okay. And so I usually just start with, okay, well, what's your big vision? What is it that you're trying to do? Why are you doing this? To get to the heart of the matter. Mm-hmm. And then I pull together, as I'm listening to them and asking them those questions about passion, I'm also asking questions about what skill sets do you have? Okay. What have you been doing in your career? Do you like it? Do you love it? Are you really good at it? What are you really good at? And then I blend the two. Sometimes we have a business model that relates to what it was that they called me about. And oftentimes we've talked about a very different business model that they never thought of. Because my goal is to help them to understand that you're not likely to get any grant funding. Okay. So, again, this is a business. Yeah. Are you ready to go into business for yourself? Yeah. And even with a nonprofit, you don't own a nonprofit. It's your baby, but if you put together a board of directors that does what it's supposed to do, and your board of directors decides that you're going in a direction that they don't want you to go in, they can get rid of you. And most people don't know that. Yeah,
you know, and it's interesting that you bring out that point, and I'm very glad that you did, because even in the business side, when people get board of directors and all, and I think the most classic example that people reference, you know, they're shocked that Steve Jobs, you know, was removed from
his own company. Yeah,
right. And people don't get that about the structure and operation of a business and a nonprofit. I always share with the individuals that when you create an entity, you know, which is a new life, you know, you actually are now contributing to the body of society. Yeah. And so when that body becomes important enough and significant enough to impact the society, you lose that.
Kind of lose control.
Yeah, and so I think it's very good. You know, I think even in the nonprofit sector, people don't think about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you brought that point out. So we talk about nuggets on this show, and as we go through, and I tell you that is a very our very first nugget among the many that we didn't point out. But again, remember that as you form the organizational structure of your organization, that you understand that you have to be consistent with the goals of the organization and the board of directors support. So I guess there's a real good dance between working with the board of directors and being the leader of the organization or executive director. What would you say to that?
I think it's different
Okay.
for startups and for fully established nonprofits.
Okay.
For the startups, most folks are really, they usually are begging people to be on their board.
Okay.
For the purpose of the application, a lot of people just, they put their friends, their family members on their board, which I usually advise against because you shoot yourself in the foot. With a startup, if you don't have people on the board who are just as serious about the mission as you are, they'll just be what I call a paper board.
Yeah.
Versus established organizations, they really seek out individuals who are well connected in the community, have money to contribute, because a very big part of getting grant funding is they want to see that your board is contributing financially.
And I appreciate you bringing that focus to this conversation, because I think when people are building boards like you've described, that they don't really understand that you want to create or have people who have spheres of influence.
Right.
And, and I don't want to just repeat what you said, but I really want you to go into that just a little bit deeper. We don't have to spend too much time.
Okay.
So what in selecting a board, what are some advice? What are the characteristics of those individuals you encourage them to look for?
I would say that you want people on the board who's going to represent pretty much all of your business interests. So you want somebody who has expertise in the law.
Okay.
Preferably nonprofit law, corporate law, because a nonprofit is a corporation. Marketing, accounting is a big one.
Okay.
A lot of people are scared of numbers.
Yeah.
And so because you have that 990, you've got to file those annual taxes. You've got certain statutory legal requirements as far as paperwork that you have to manage. You really want people who know that field and can do that. Whatever the program area is, if you've got somebody who is an expert in the program area, it just looks better in terms of future grant funding when you talk about leveraging.
Yeah.
And when you can say that our board of directors is heavily experienced in these areas, it means we know what we're talking about, and it means that we're very serious about our business.
That's excellent. I tell you, I thank you. That was profound. I think it is something that a lot of startups overlook. But again, guys, it's a great important nugget to take, and we're going to come back after we take this break, and again thank our sponsors and advertisers for making this opportunity possible. But we're going to continue. As you see, in fact, if you would take this video and share it with your friends, those who are in the nonprofit sector, because what you are just getting right here, I mean, that's some great startup advice that you can utilize in terms of propelling your organization at the initial phase of launching your nonprofit. So Chataun, we thank you for this great information, and we will continue to have great conversation with Chataun Denis, again the founder and the leader of Grant Source, and discussing those components that make for a successful nonprofit as well as business. So we'll see you right after these messages.
What happens when soldiers come home? Brene Foundation offers hero support to ensure that our heroes abroad can continue to be heroes at home. We link veterans with organizations who are dedicated to guiding the transition from military hero to civilian hero. If you want to find out how you can support our troops at home, please contact the Brene Foundation or visit brene.com.
Does your son need a more challenging, focused, and encouraging educational environment? Renaissance Christian Academy is an affordable private school for boys located in McDonough, Georgia, with certified teachers that are uniquely equipped to help your son master learning. You're welcome to schedule a tour of our facilities by calling 770-305-9881 or by visiting our website at rcaboysacademy.org. Renaissance Christian Academy, developing young men to be great leaders through Christ-centered learning.
Thank you for returning, and again, we do thank our sponsors, particularly our show sponsors, Sip for Your Cause. Visit them at www.sipforyourcause.org. Great organization that is about helping nonprofits increase their awareness, funding, their sustainability, and ultimately their impact. Well, we are here having a great conversation with Chataun Denis. She is the owner and operator of Grant Source. And again, as we've originally said, she's basically become a Google in the nonprofit sector in terms of morphing. You know, Google started out with one focus, but it has gone through multiple phases of growth. And even now, they're now rebranding their logo because they're trying to encompass the greater work and services that they provide. Well, Denis has done the same thing. She started off specifically with her company writing grants, and therefore the name Grant Source. But guys, she has morphed in terms of encompassing all phases of helping nonprofits and businesses who are socially conscious about achieving their objectives. So if you are a nonprofit organization, reach out to her. In fact, if you don't mind, let's take this time to just share how they can get in contact with you.
Well, I do. I have a presence online. You can reach me via my website at www.grantsource, that's GRANTSOURCE1.com. On the home page, you can book a free 20-minute phone consultation. I do those on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's just you picking my brain and me sharing some nuggets with you to help you broaden your idea and maybe figure out some next steps on how to move forward.
Guys, if you've heard the conversation, the first half of the program, you see it's great information already. So if you can imagine spending time alone asking the questions you want with her, how rich that is. So again, we're encouraging you to reach out to her at www.grantsource1.com and book your free session and work with Denis as she can help you achieve your goals. I would tell you also that let's continue with our conversation. You started off in the last section of the programming, just talking about some very significant nuggets in terms of board selection and those type things that are great nuggets. But you know, let's go back a little further. Let's rewind it and let's talk about exactly what does it mean to be a nonprofit 501c3.
501c3 is the number for that part of the tax code that governs how nonprofits work. The 501c3 is a corporation. It is a business, and it must accept that the difference between the for-profit and that particular type of nonprofit is that it must be designed exclusively for charitable, educational, religious, scientific, and a couple of other charitable purposes. Right. The way I like to explain it in layman's terms is in exchange for you or I taking on a project in the community that helps the disenfranchised or the underserved or unserved, the IRS and our government says, we thank you for your work and your commitment. In exchange for that, we will allow people in the general community to give you money so that you can help do that work, because it is not likely that you're going to generate a profit.
Right.
So in order for you to be able to do the work that you want to do, we'll allow those donors to contribute, and in exchange for their contributions, they can write them off on their taxes. Okay. So that's really what it means to be nonprofit. It is a business. It is a corporation, just like any other corporation. The exception is that 501c3s can receive tax-deductible gifts and that board issue. And, and the board must be an all-volunteer board.
Okay.
No board members can be paid.
Okay. So let me ask you this, going back to that concept, and I personally believe that's the best explanation I've ever heard about defining.
Well,
Yeah, it really is. I think it's very clear. You leave no room. So let me ask you this. So if a nonprofit, so let's talk about that. So when it says nonprofit, a lot of people think, we're not.
You can't make a profit.
Yeah. So talk about that. Just
nonprofits should make a profit. You do want your nonprofit to make a profit. The distinction, the quote-unquote nonprofit aspect is we can't do what Wall Street did some years back when the system nearly collapsed, in that paying the excessive compensation, bonuses, and whatnot. Nonprofits can have staff, they can pay their staffs, and you want to pay your staff members very well in accordance with what's going in the market for a particular position. You can pay your staff members bonuses, you can pay them commission checks. Everything is the same, except your staff members cannot be paid excessively.
Okay. So I think I may have said something in the past on some shows because I was trying to get people to understand that nonprofits are businesses. Mm-hmm. And so I was saying every business principle you need to apply and all this. But I think I may have made the comment, it's in the back of my head, that I said the only difference is that your ledger has to show that somehow you've done that. In other words, the profit doesn't exist. So that's a misstatement based upon...
The profit can exist.
Yeah.
And now I'm finding that funders, foundation funders, like to see that you actually have as much of a profit as you possibly can, but the profit must be reinvested back into the mission.
Okay. And I think that's okay. I appreciate that. And that's what I was getting to, that, you just can't take that profit and run off and...
Right. Pay your board members and, just, you can get, again, you can compensate your staff well according to what the market is paying those positions in other areas, but you cannot excessively pay.
So, again, guys, remember, and those of you who have followed us since day one, more than a year ago, I told you I am not in the nonprofit space, and so you always go back and do the research and get in contact with the guests that we bring on so that you can get the great and right and perfect advice, because again, I'm sharing with you what I've done my research and come to understand. But I think this again is one of the best explanations I've gotten in terms of what truly a nonprofit is. So I thank you for that. So Chataun Denis has said you should seek to make a profit. So how do nonprofits make money?
I like to use, it's a very unique business model. It's a beneficial business model. For-profits make a profit by creating a product and selling that product, keeping operating costs as low as possible, and maximizing profit. For nonprofits, we too, and I'm not nonprofit, let me clarify that. For nonprofits too should have a product to sell, whether it be a service or a widget product. The difference between the for-profit and the nonprofit product and the way they sell it is that nonprofits aren't out to maximize profits. So they may sell it below market rate. They may offer a discount. But the ideal is that the nonprofit will make some profit on that widget or that product or that service.
So I've heard some nonprofits say, when they've been presented with the opportunity to sell something, and they would say something that their, not charter or whatever it may be, but their bylaws, but it says prevents them from selling. What is that about?
As a nonprofit 501c3, we're allowed 5% of our total annual gross income to be earned income from non-related business activities. Now, if, say, we have a mentoring program and we charge our mentees $25 a month as a membership, that's one revenue source. The nonprofit can sell T-shirts, or the girls can sell T-shirts, the mentees can sell T-shirts. They can have a program whereby they learn to make jewelry, and they can sell that jewelry. Those are all revenue sources. Once we try to buy real estate as a mentoring program, that's non-related business income. If the girls aren't living there and they don't have programs operating out of those houses that they're buying and selling, then we have to pay taxes on that money. Now, when it comes to bylaws, each nonprofit, when they found the organization, creates their own bylaws. And they tell the IRS what it is that they plan to do in terms of mission. Now, if they decide to expand their mission and do something totally different from their bylaws, all they have to do is revise their bylaws. If it's totally different from what they told the IRS they were going to do, then they can contact the IRS and just amend their paperwork. So it really just depends. Prohibited from doing certain business. You just want to make sure that you don't cross the fine line of doing business that is different from what you told the IRS you were going to do.
Guys, again, I'm going to throw my full endorsement behind Chataun and Denis because I'm telling you, this information has been informative for me, and that's why I seek out great guests that if I'm learning, I know you guys got to be learning, because you're in the space and you're seeking to benefit from. So, again, we're encouraging you to reach out to Chataun, and you hear the great advice that she's getting. You're hearing the knowledge that she has, guys, to give you some great advice and coaching and direction. So, again, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to her. Her web address is grantsource1.com, and that is the number 1. Reach out to her and take advantage of that free 30-minute consultation.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Take advantage of that free 20-minute consultation, and again, and determine how you can engage with her to accomplish your organization's goals. So we've talked about what a nonprofit is. We've talked about how you can make money in a nonprofit setting. Now let's get into what most people, when they start nonprofits, think that they can live off of to make this thing work, and that's grants.
Right.
How do grants work?
Grants are awarded primarily from foundation organizations, and these are corporate organizations as well. They're 501c3s. There are 2 types of 501c3s. There's public and private. The private ones give away the money, and these are usually wealthy families who may have had a deceased grandfather, grandmother, mother, daddy, brother, sister, uncle, who they want to commemorate or memorialize in the form of a foundation. It's basically a tax shelter. So they have a large sum of money, and they get certain tax benefits from putting that large sum of money into an interest-bearing investment vehicle. And they have to pay a certain amount of money out of that fund. Last time I thought it was 5%. So they have to give away at least 5% of their earnings. And so when they do that, they give that money to other 501c3s that are public and in the form of grants.
Very good. I hope you... Again, just in this time that we've been sitting here, I have learned so much from just talking and getting clarification. You think you understand something until you get with someone who knows it. And again, I hope you've received clarification, even though, and I know there are many of you who are out there starting your nonprofits or considering, or you've already started it, and you had the misconception about grants and how they work. And in fact, I've heard too many of you come onto the show and talk about your idea of grants and what you plan to do. But that's why we also bring on those who are experts in the industry so that you can get some correct understanding. And so we hope that, again, we're achieving that objective. And so when you talk about businesses operating as a nonprofit or a for-profit, what's your advice? How do you...
I usually tell people my litmus test is, the question I ask is, do you know people with money who are ready to give it to you today? The average person wants to go to Walmart or Sam's Club, and they'll say, I ask them, how are you going to make money? And they say, oh, I was thinking I would get a grant. I'll say, no, you're not going to get a grant. What are your other ideas of how you will make money? And they say they'll do fundraising. They'll go to the Walmart and they'll put a bucket on the table, and they'll allow people to come by, and they hope that people will drop their cash. This is not enough money to operate a business. So, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What were we?
You were trying. You're saying what your litmus test is.
For profit or nonprofit.
Right.
So yes, the litmus test is: do you know people who are ready to write you a handsome check that they can write off on their taxes? Because $50, $100 is not necessarily going to reduce their tax liability. Right. So if you don't know any rich people or wealthy people looking for a tax deduction, then you may as well start your business as a social enterprise, which is start your business as a business, do the good work, but still think of it as a business, approach it like a business, create a business model, and figure out what your product and service is. Sell it at a reduced rate, but make sure you make a profit so that you're not waiting on a grant that may never likely come.
Great advice, and those of you, again, who follow us and watch us frequently, you hear me. I think if I haven't said anything more than one other thing, I've always said, guys, you're in business. Treat your nonprofit organization like a business, but you're hearing the reason behind it. You know, I come from a business background and perspective, and that's really what initiated this whole show. But I'm telling you, hearing from the expert who's in it, breathes it, drinks it, bathes in it, and understands it from head to toe. So you've heard the rationale behind all of my banter about treat your nonprofit as a business, but you've heard the expert give you the rationale behind it. And I'm going to again tell you, you need to reach out to Chataun Denis at grantsource1.com and get with her. Just from the information you've shared right here, Chataun, has been enough to get someone on the right track.
Right.
And that's the purpose of this show, is to provide resources for nonprofit organizations to achieve, again, increased awareness, funding, sustainability, and ultimately impact. And just the information you've shared in this brief time to converse has been tremendous. I want to go one more step and begin to close, but I'm going to leave it an open-ended question, because we've talked a lot, and I would tell you another thing, that Grant Source will provide you the opportunity that if you don't know specific goals, they will help you goal set. They will help you build those benchmarks to measure your progress. And I'm going to encourage you, again, regardless of the phase in which you are in, just from my research of the company, that they can help you at any stage of your business. So I know we've talked about a lot of startup concepts, but a lot of those principles apply even if you are not a startup.
Right.
So again, reach out to Chataun. I'm just going to open up and say, before we leave, is there any last parting idea or concept that you would like to share with the sector?
I want to clarify, as we use the word business, that just make sure that what we are doing is mission focused. Okay. And that's the big key, between nonprofit and for-profit business. Okay. They both operate the same, except that the nonprofit must be mission focused. It must be charitable focused. It doesn't mean that we can't make money. It doesn't mean that we can't be paid for our work and compensated like everybody else for our work. But it must have a business model. It must be a business-minded organization, but it must focus on the charity work.
Yeah, I like that. So it's a business, but with a social enterprise focus. Is that correct? Yeah. And from this day forward, you will hear me use that terminology to describe as I push you forward to operate with all the business principles that are out there. Again, I'm always seeking to learn and to be educated. And Chataun, thank you for doing that for me today, so that I can better articulate to the community and the nonprofit sector who follow us and watch us and spread this out to millions of people, that I want to make sure that I am giving you the accurate information, again, in my informal position in the sector. So thank you for your expert position. Thank you for your expert knowledge. Again, we're going to encourage you to reach out to Chataun Denis, and that you will reach her at www.grantsource.com. That's one, grantsource1, the number 1.com. Anything else in terms of communication, any social media contacts?
I am on Facebook and Twitter, and I do have free YouTube videos out there as well. I have free videos on my website. I do also have a video blog whereby I have recorded and produced many of my trainings.
Yes.
And they can access that on the e-learning tab in the website.
Good, good. Very good, everyone. Again, we thank you for joining us again for another episode of Let's Talk Nonprofits. We are excited that we had Ms. Chataun Denis here, the owner, founder of GrantSource, to provide you great information. So we ask that you take this information and continue to grow your business with your social responsible focus, and that remember, as always, we encourage you to continue to move forward, excel, and as SIP for Your Cause, their comment says to you, this SIP's for you.